Now it's time for Inspirational Women, and my guest, Caroline Topperman, a multi-talented woman we might even call a Renaissance woman. Today we're going to focus on storyteller and writer, and Caroline's new book, Your Roots Cast a Shadow. Caroline Topperman, good morning. Thank you so greatly for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, I am grateful that we have this opportunity. You're just such an amazing, adventurous woman, and someone who you have such a great talent with language and writing that you're able to tell us these stories of all your adventures that I really admire who you are and what you're doing. And part of that'll come in when we get a chance to maybe talk about a writing workshop that you have coming up next year. And anyway, welcome. I'm so glad that we have this time together.
Thank you. That's so nice.
Well, it's simply the truth, Caroline, right? Isn't it?
It's nice to hear. It's very nice to hear. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, you only I became aware of you just in three last weeks, because I was given the opportunity to know about your book, Your Roots Cast a Shadow, One Family's Search Across History for Belonging. And that touches me, and I hope it touches a lot of people, actually. But it touches me because looking at our roots and wanting to discover more, to greater and lesser degrees over time, it really does touch me, though, and I've had little bits of experience with that. But for you, I think it's been really a much deeper, longer passion. And of course, here's the book to attest to it, and it's an amazing story.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the book it was being written for a very long time. So it started with, so my mother passed away a number of years ago in 1995. And at that moment, I had this strange realization. I just entered university. I was in film school. We were talking about stories and writing and all of this. And I realized that there was so much I didn't know about her really, and her family, or my dad's family for that matter. But I was just young enough that I hadn't yet known my mother as an adult. I knew her as a child, late older teen. And so I started walking and talking with my dad. It was partially to heal. We were grieving, of course, but I started recording him, and I had one of those really old recorders with the little tape cassette. Dating myself. And so I just started recording him and just taking down these stories. And I didn't actually do that much with the recorder itself, but that feeling never left me. And then the summer after she died, my dad said he wanted to take us to Poland because he wanted us, my sister and me, to see where our roots were. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time we had gone back to Poland. Or been to Poland. He hadn't been in years either, because he had been kicked out and couldn't return to Poland for many years. And it was just this discovery of all these people that we didn't know.
Family members that maybe you hadn't heard about, but here you were meeting them for the first time.
Exactly.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
So what was your impression, actually? Because that was... that's almost 30 years ago, right? That trip happened. It's hard to fathom. 95 seems like, that was recent. And then you do the numbers and you go, oh, no. But what was the experience for you?
That was an interesting trip, because that was the first time I met my dad's mother. My dad had been disowned by his parents. So I never met his father. It was the first time I met my dad's brother. It was the first time I met my dad's nephew, but my dad, I think, always felt like he was his older brother. First time I met cousins. These are people I had never seen before, and I only had a vague idea that they existed. They weren't real in my life. And Poland of then is not the Poland of now. Absolutely. We really were centered more around Warsaw and then Krakow a little bit. But back then I actually have a funny story in the book about that, where I wanted to buy running shoes, just regular, I think they were Puma, just the regular trendy shoe. And I had one shoe was in one store that I tried on, and they sent me across the street to get the other shoe. And I remember the first McDonald's had just opened, and my cousins were dying to go there and they couldn't afford it. And we said to them, like, we will take you wherever you want to go for lunch. You let us know. And I remember how disappointing it was that they wanted to go to McDonald's. And so it was a very different country. They had just come out not that long ago from behind the Iron Curtain. They were really just opening up to the world.
Mhm.
And I remember also they're still on their money, so they use the złotówka, that's their currency. But back then you'd have like five different currencies that they could accept money in, the old one, the new one, the euro, this and that. So it was a very interesting time. And another really funny event was we were going to Krakow, and it's a train ride. It's not very expensive. It's nothing. And I remember we sat down, my dad bought tickets, and we're on the train. My sister and my dad went exploring. They come back and they're telling me about how amazing first class is on that train. And we're sitting in second class, which was fine. And the best was when I said, "Hey, how much were those first class tickets?" And my dad realized that they were $2 more. And he was like, "Wow, I've never traveled first class and I didn't even think about it. And it didn't even occur to me that we could do that." And of course, now prices and things have balanced out a little bit better. It's much different now. It's vibrant and cosmopolitan and filled with color. But yeah, that first trip, that was a very interesting. It was more like you think of Eastern Europe in the movies.
Yeah. But then, like about 20 years later, it's 18 years later, because wasn't it 2013, you then moved there, which again, I'm amazed, impressed that you had a facility with the language, that you were comfortable doing that, and of course would have grown as you were there, but totally different experience, obviously,
Yeah,
right?
so we grew up speaking Polish at home. It was that home kind of Polish where you throw in an English word every now and then. And it wasn't maybe the trendiest of language versions, because when I went there, there were definitely some shocks. But my husband and I so my husband was born in Poland, and we decided to go just on a visit, just 2011 or so. We thought, okay, we'll just go check it out. And it was buzzing. It had that New York City excitement to it that's just rippling under the surface. Restaurants and coffee shops and little stores everywhere. The whole city, Warsaw, was just really active. And we both thought, well, this is kind of cool. This is a great place. And Vancouver, where we were, had just gone, well, just like big part of our world had just gone through the economic crash. So things were a little bit tougher. Life was just a little bit harder. And I had a moment of, what if we just move? What if we just sell everything and go? What's the worst that can happen? We come back in a year or two and are completely humiliated and people tell us we were wrong. And so it took us about a year and a half to get our passports. For my husband, it was faster. For me, I had to provide more proof that my family was Polish, but all very doable. And we just got our passports and showed up one day. And so now, to be completely fair, people speak English there very well. People take English in school, so getting around is not as hard as people think. Anyone, if you just speak English, you can just be dropped to almost anywhere in Poland and you will be fine. The trade, like transportation, is all bilingual. Restaurants have bilingual menus. So it's not as hard as people think.
And I think, though, that attests to Europe, where people speak multiple languages, including English, much more so than we do in the US, for sure, I think. A little more so in Canada, that happens, even if it is sort of a mishmash of language plus English that's strewn together, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Most of my friends there spoke three, four, five languages. So that part wasn't too hard. And of course, the first work that I got there officially was writing in English. So
Go
yeah,
figure. See, that's how your life's experience really comes into play and provides for
exactly.
life, right? And that it comes back to the writing of this book and how the stories and your roots cast a shadow. As I was reading it, I just felt, oh, the language is just so engaging. I was thinking, oh, it's lyrical. It's just it's a pleasure to read. Truly, there's writing that's like, okay, I need to get through this. I need to read this. And other times it's like, oh gosh, this is just so, it's like wrapping yourself up in a nice blanket.
Thank you. And I really have to give credit to my editors too.
Okay,
We,
thank you,
we
editors.
cannot forget them.
Yet they need to start with something, right? And you provide that product. And this is the story of those experiences. And that's the thing, that it's captivating, and how you're able to really convey that to us so that we feel that we live through the experience with you.
Thank you. I mean, I come from a long line of storytellers on both
Ah,
sides. That's one of the things my grandfather, my mother's father, we would take these long walks and he would just tell me stories and tell me things and explain things, whether it was the names of trees or some travels or anything like that. And then my dad was a very big storyteller as well. I have so many recordings of him telling stories about his family. And my maternal grandfather wrote a book. Now, the book itself is very dry because he's an engineer, or he was an engineer, and it's lists of names of people he knew.
mm.
He called it a chronicle of events, and it really is just a chronicle, but it talks about his time as a young man growing up. And so I was able to really draw on that. And then as I was writing Your Roots Cast a Shadow, I actually found, or I was given 38 pages that my other grandfather had written while my family lived in Afghanistan during the war. And he was building the road from Kabul to Jalalabad. And so suddenly I had his words too. And letter writing was really big in my family. I suppose there was a time where everybody wrote letters. We didn't have phones in the same way. And so my grandfather saved a lot of them. So I really got that conversational tone of all those letters. And also because no matter how hard I try to be very literary, I somehow wind up writing the way I speak. And so that's where all of this comes from.
There's that storytelling. But what a gift to have saved those letters. Really amazing to have that. And you contrast it with today. I think, yes, we can text. I mean, who has any kind of collection of texts? That doesn't happen. Even emails aren't really preserved. So I think, when we look to the future, there's going to be such an emptiness, a lack of those stories if they were communicated that way.
I agree. I agree. I know that we're seeing each other here, but you can't see them, but I have boxes of these letters and papers and things from family. The other thing that really helped were the photographs too, because they convey an image, a really warm image each time. So I could tap into that too.
I hope with those photographs, because I think of old photos that we have in the family without notation of who this is or what the occasion is, or you can tell, oh, it's a wedding, but whose wedding is it? So I hope in your case they actually had some names or dates.
Some do, and some are a big mystery of what could possibly be happening in this photo. Yeah.
Right. So did you use any kind of genealogy at the library, for instance, in doing your research?
I couldn't use too much because none of my research, so I live in Canada, and none of the research really it's all very Canada based or
Oh,
US based. And my family is not from here. I came over as an immigrant myself. And
yeah.
so that part was harder. I did do somebody in my family on my mother's side, some distant cousin had done a genealogy of that side of the family, which was great. My dad knew enough about his more immediate family, which was great. But a lot of it I didn't know, and a lot of it I still don't know. I actually somewhere in that process, I did reach out to genealogists, and I found, and this is just a great tip for anybody if you are doing genealogy, studies in Europe specifically, go look for genealogists that are on the ground there. One, it's a lot cheaper, and two, they just have those resources. So I've actually found a place in Poland. It's, they write to me in English. I write them back in Polish and English, so it's fine. There's no problem communicating at all.
Mhm.
And the family that I was looking for your roots, Cast a Shadow, it was actually they were in and around Lvov, which is now Lviv in Ukraine. And
Mhm.
of course, we know that there is a war happening there. So a lot of that is not accessible to me, but they were able to contact people there. And so it's a little bit on hold until until I can get there possibly to do that. So I haven't lost that heart, the desire to find that out. I still want to know what happened to my great grandparents. But one of the sort of strange, I don't know if it's really genealogy or not, but when we moved to Poland, completely unbeknownst to me, we were living on the street where my family lived right after the war. And then we moved about a half a block away, and my dad came to visit, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, my family lived there." And the building was right next door to mine. And then walking down the street, my cousin said, "Oh, that's where your parents were married." And then I saw where my mom went to school. So even though it wasn't a more distant genealogy, it was
Mhm.
really interesting because it was right there in
Yeah.
front of me too.
Right. You could literally
Touch it.
touch it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's right here. Yeah, it gives us chills, doesn't it, to realize that it's really that tangible. And also amazing because you consider the wars that went on and the destruction that took place, and yet, all that still remains standing. It's remarkable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Warsaw was rebuilt. So most of Warsaw was decimated, but I think they won awards for this. Don't quote me, please. But the city was rebuilt very quickly after the war, and it was rebuilt to look like it had before the war. So even if a building might be new, chances are a building that looked like that stood in that spot. Yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. I
Mhm.
had not known that. Oh, that is great. Good to kind of look into again. But what we're discovering and what I really appreciate is this search for roots. Your roots cast a shadow because we really find out more about ourselves when we do find out about the past and who our family was and what they did, and sometimes maybe we don't like to learn that, but I think more often we're going to be surprised and amazed, and at the very least just really appreciate what their lives were and what we benefit from.
Oh, absolutely. And there's just so much more that I learned about my family. So my grandparents, my mother's parents, as Jews fleeing the war, they didn't want to talk about it. And they dissuaded me from asking questions, and they didn't want to answer anything. And a lot I found out after reading my grandfather's book. I didn't know they were fleeing, and they wound up in Uzbekistan, in Tashkent. And then they came back to rebuild the country. They were kicked out again in 68. But these were things I didn't really know about. I didn't even know to ask some of these questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? Yes. I mean, yes, to then discover this whole other wealth of experience
Mhm.
in life. Yes, all that history.
Yeah. And especially, and then the other ones, I'm working on another book, of course, that focuses more on the other side of the family. But just those stories from Afghanistan, I actually work with girls who are in an underground school in Afghanistan. I'm not allowed to see their faces when we chat over like this. And I just teach them writing. We talk about writing and literature in general. And it's amazing because I think they're surprised about how much I know about Afghanistan and my connection to Afghanistan. Obviously, I can't go to Afghanistan, but it's kind of comes full circle, even though my roots technically are not, I'm not Af and that's not my nationality, but I understand a little bit about the culture because my grandfather worked there and my father spent his formative years there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there it is, casting a shadow. There's that
It,
something is within you
exactly.
that has that connection. But I'm in awe that you are able to have this connection to teach these girls writing. How amazing is that?
It's amazing. I came in contact with one of the directors of the school because I needed some help translating Afghan folk tales that were among the papers that I received from my grandfather. And so I just needed some clarification about who these characters were. And so then he told me about the school, and I thought, I want to help. I want to be part of this. As they started becoming more silenced, I thought they need more help getting their voices out because otherwise, again, those roots will completely close up, and we
Yes.
don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. And here is your gift of being able to tell stories, write stories, so it's natural to have that connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that is a good place for us to actually mention how in the spring you have what sounds like a great and amazing writers retreat that's going to be happening.
Yes. So I co-own a hybrid press with a friend of mine in the US. And so we had our first retreat last year, and it was amazing. We found this little inn right almost on the border of Canada and the US. Like you can actually see the US right from your room. And if you spit, I think you could hit the US. And yeah, it's this little inn. We get the whole inn to ourselves. There's this chef that comes in. This has nothing to do with writing, but it's so exciting. The chef comes in the morning and cooks this amazing breakfast for us, and people wind up taking that food and eating it all day. And then there's also my mentor comes as well, and the three of us teach workshops, and then there's a lot of writing time, and the whole place has this amazing history between Canada and the US, the War of 1812. And well, now we'll have the battle of who won that war. But but there's just this amazing history there. The whole vibe is just so welcoming, and the fact that we take over this place for 3 days. And the inn is amazing because they give everybody an extra night for free. So people usually either come early or late, and they write. And it's, of course, in the middle of Niagara wine country. So there are vineyards everywhere. There's also a huge theater community. It's a very artsy community. And it's like you are immersed in this world of arts for a few days. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. And spring, it's at the end of April. So that's when the magnolia trees
Mm,
bloom, and yeah, it's just beautiful too. So I'm very
yes.
excited.
So, if this is, kind of intriguing someone, how do they find out and get enrolled in this?
Yeah, absolutely. That's easy. And for anybody who's in the US, we specifically made it in Canadian dollars so that it's a bargain.
Yes.
But it's on mountainash.press. That's our website. And it says very clearly that Ontario writer retreat in Ontario wine country, and all the information is there. And if people have questions, they can always email us.
Yes, all that contact info. Considering all that we're talking about in terms of your writing and how reaching out to these Afghan girls just is such an incredible gift to be helping them. But in turn, we can't help someone without helping ourselves in the
Of course.
course of it, right? So, but it's natural to think about like this is such a great way to either begin to explore or to deepen that exploration of writing and continue to get into it. So what a great time that is. And so with this latest book, but you said wait, you're writing a new book too. That's right.
Of course.
Working on your paternal side of the family.
That's
Yes.
right.
So you've got a lot of writing going on.
I do. I do. The second book just came naturally after this first. Of course, I'm still very excited about Your Roots Cast a Shadow, and it's still very new for me. But I couldn't not look at my father's side of the family too.
Yes. Absolutely. Then I mean it gives you more of what your whole rounded history right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And now, how does your sister participate in this? Is she a writer?
She's not. She took after my mom and she's an interior designer.
Ah,
So artistic, just in a little bit of a different way.
right.
Um, and I, because it's memoir, I try to keep her, she's of course mentioned, but especially in this book, this one, the Your Roots Cast the Shadow takes place mostly in Poland. And she wasn't there. So I do mention her and her kids, but I leave it a little bit separate because it's memoir and it gets touchy with family and you don't want to bring people in and I don't want to disrespect anybody even accidentally. So I try to the adults they can fend for themselves.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of people are already deceased, so there wasn't much I could do there.
Hmm.
But for the people who are alive and well, I don't. I like especially my nieces and nephews who are all fabulous. I thought, no, they're too young to make these decisions of whether or not they want to be in a book.
Right. But the thing is that they have the experience of now learning about these roots so much more easily. And as I said, in such a readable way. I mean, I just, if for no other reason than the way that you've written, honestly, people should value this book. But really, the content too, I think it can spark some thoughts or maybe connections or something to go, do some of our own investigation.
Well, that was actually thank you because you hit right on the point of that. I I've read a lot of history books now. I've watched a lot of history shows and things just in doing my research for this, and a lot of it are their dates. It's dry, and even if an event is interesting, sometimes you can only read it in very short bursts because I'm sorry, but it is boring. And I completely agree. I know what that makes me sound like, but I couldn't I had a hard time getting through them too because enough dates and my head is swimming with numbers and I'm missing that humanity and I'm missing that story.
Hmm.
And I thought what I set out to do, and clearly successfully, thank you, is to combine some learning and some history because I think that is important. I think right now the way the world is proof that we are forgetting history very quickly. So I think that that's very important, have that element there, but also have it in a very relatable way and have it feel that we're sitting down for a cup of coffee and I'm just telling you a story about my family.
Hmm.
And I find that I've been the person who loved that. I loved when my parents' friends came over and they started talking. I was the kid who sat there and listened to those stories and tried to absorb that. And I love hearing about other people's stories. And so what I wanted it to be is a conversation starter. And I wanted people to be able to find little similarities, even if the stories are completely different, but to say, oh, hey, that makes me think of XYZ in my family.
Hmm.
And then suddenly we have a connection.
Yes, absolutely. And so we're connected, which really is significant, again, considering today's world, to find those connections and then to, yeah, be stimulated to find those stories in our own life and be able to share them and pass them along.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we've also lost the art of listening a little bit.
Mm,
So it's just to stop and listen and think for a minute and then speak, I guess. So
yeah.
to find those similarities.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you are really just amazing. I so appreciate you, Caroline. This book,
Thank you.
Your Roots Cast a Shadow, has really been such a pleasure, as I mentioned earlier, to read and highly recommend it for so many reasons. And at this season where we're thinking of gift giving, definitely, something to keep top of mind, I believe. You have a website we mentioned for the writers workshop, but you have a website too that we should mention.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's carolinetopperman.com. It's my name. I'm the only one. If you find me online, that's me. And if people want to email, I answer. So,
Yes,
yeah,
because that's you. You want to hear the stories and make those
absolutely.
connections, right? Yes, it's the
Absolutely.
listening piece. Well, this has been a delight. I'm so grateful for you, for the work that you're doing, for the connections you're making, and wish you only the best as the days and the years roll out, especially the 2025.
Thank you so much. This has been such a great chat. I love it. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I've truly enjoyed it too. So thank you for your time. That brings us to the end of a very full hour of Inspirational Women with Caroline Topperman and Sunday Morning Magazine with Non Ma. I'm Kate Daniels, your host, and I greatly appreciate your sharing this hour with me and these special guests. For details you might have missed or information you'd like to know, please just send me an email, kated@warm1069.com, and I will get right back to you. Also, if you'd like to listen again or just share these important stories with your family and friends, find the podcast on our Warm 1069 webpage. Just click on the Listen tab, then Podcasts, then either of the show names, and then look for the guest names. I now wish you and your family a day of sharing stories and building curiosity and a desire to learn. Have a week of the same, and then please plan to join me again next weekend for another hour of Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women on Warm 1069. Good morning and big wishes for a wonderful 2025, your best year ever.